So the ANC says its former president, Jacob Zuma, has automatically expelled himself from the party. This after Zuma endorsed the newly formed uMkhonto with Sizwe Political Party. ANC Secretary General Fikile Mbalula was addressing ANC members in Barberton in Mpumalanga at the Cadres Forum meeting. He says the ANC is not going to subject Zuma to a disciplinary hearing. He says if Zuma had issues with the ANC leadership, he could have addressed them through the right channels within the organization. He says the ANC will approach the courts as it attempts to reclaim the uMkhonto with Sizwe name. And of course, this unfolding as the party today celebrates its 112th birthday. The January 8th statement set to be delivered this weekend. And we are joined now by political analyst, Dr. Professor Seepe, who's going to talk to us a little bit about a piece that he's penned for the IOL and other publications as well. And in this piece, it's titled ANC's January 8th statement will be mainly smoke and mirrors. Prof, good morning to you and thank you so much for joining us.
Good morning.
We really do appreciate your time. You've taken quite a bit of time to really try and dissect what this particular January 8th statement of 2024 means for the political party. But you start off with, in the piece, really talking first about why the January 8th statement was established in the very first place. Will you take us through that train of thought?
Yeah, one would remember that through the process of the prosecution of the struggle against colonialism and apartheid, the party was, then it was called the Liberation Movement. It was banned and members were either in exile or in prisons and some remained underground in the country. Now with a party where members are scattered, it became necessary to have a way in which you can communicate with all members. So the January 8th statement became a connecting rod. But in connecting this and creating a sense of community, the statement will sought to cover a number of areas. One is to say, where are we in terms of our struggle? What are the balance of forces inside and outside the country? Remember that the ANC had 4 pillars that guided its struggle. One was the internal mass mobilization. The second one was the international mobilization against apartheid. And then there was armed struggle. There's also armed propaganda. So it was necessary to make sure that all these things find expression in the statement. In doing so, it provided a line of march for members of the ANC wherever they are. And it also enabled them to speak with one voice. Yeah,
I'm going to read from your piece here, Prof, because you say the January 8th statement was reduced to a meaningless, revolutionary sounding exercise. But one could easily argue that as the African National Congress works towards this, what they call the renewal agenda, this plan to renew the party, that, that sort of template of the January 8th statement works then to unify the party.
Yeah, what has happened, as you would expect with all struggles, and Mandela put it very nicely, that as you climb one hill, then you discover that there are many more hills to climb. So the advent of democracy, which was considered to be a breakthrough, was one marker. But that marker meant that the new struggle and new hill had to be climbed. And since then, we found the ANC faltering. If you take descriptions that have been made by the likes of Dr. Zuma about the perilous state of the ANC, it indicates that you have a sick organization. If you take the statements that were made by the former President Thabo Mbeki, he also alludes to the fact that this ANC that is supposed to encourage its members to defend and act in line with the spirit of the Constitution, have actually gone astray. They have decided to say this will be a party that protects its president by all means necessary and at all costs, including having to abandon the mission of saying we are the party of the masses. And Thabo Mbeki makes it very clear, because the ANC has for a long time claimed to be a leader of society. And he says in his letter to the Deputy President of the ANC, it seems that we are abandoning the very same people that purport to represent. And it was a scathing assessment. But it comes also with many other members of the ANC who have internally voiced their concern. And some of them have actually said, within this, what Jacob Zuma calls the ANC of Ramaphosa, the debates have declined. So as you raise these issues, you can expect that you are going to be met with slurs, with insults, instead of responding to the issues. And there are many issues that this ANC must address as it goes toward the polls. That's why I say, unless these things are addressed, the January 8th statement will be simply a cacophony of meaningless statements, even if they sound revolutionary.
Over the past 2-3 years, I think one of the big talking points, certainly within and about the African National Congress, has been, you know, the balance sheet, right? The finances within the party itself. Many challenges. Not so long ago, just over a year ago, issues around whether or not the party was able to pay its own staff. And in the piece, you talk about the vulnerability of the African National Congress. Is there something that can be said in the January 8th statement that says that the party can sustain itself? And I'm not just talking about the messaging, but the resourcing of the party as well, to say that it is strong enough to go into these elections.
Well, that is probably one of the most embarrassing aspects of the ANC, because any party and members of the party ensure that the machinery, which is the Luchida House, is resourced sufficiently to be able to do its job. This is even more critical when you have people who have historically hated the ANC, willing to put a lot of money to support the president of the ANC. Then you must ask, what are they supporting when the main house, the engine, is collapsing? Why couldn't they raise money for the ANC? And it gives credits to some who say, actually, Ramaphosa was supported by these people who hate the ANC precisely because he's the best bet to destroy it. And these are concerns that are emerging, whether is he a Trojan horse or not. And the January 8th statement must comment on how do you make sure that the machinery that's supposed to sustain the organization collapses. I mean, the most embarrassing is when you had workers that work for the ANC, spending months unemployed and having cars repossessed, and some of them being threatened with eviction in their own houses. Then you also have a party that cannot pay the service providers, that it has to be taken for. All this sends a very wrong message that this organization is in tatters.
We of course have been talking, particularly since this weekend, around the former president of the African National Congress, Jacob Zuma, expressing his support for the newly formed uMkhonto Sizwe Party on Saturday, being at that rally and heading up that rally in Mpumalanga. One of the big questions now as we start the week is, does this pose a real threat to the African National Congress? You have the Secretary General having said that, well, this move by the former president is him expelling himself from the party. What does this do to that sense of unity that the party has been talking about for years? Can they address that issue to resolve it in the January 8th statement?
The former president, Jacob Zuma, spelled out a number of concerns that he had, which he says are the ones that triggered him. Some, what you may call the straw that broke the camel's back. That needs to be responded to, that in putting this across, is he telling the truth? And the ANC will have to respond to that. Expulsion is a very easy thing to do, but it doesn't remove those concerns and questions that have been raised. And remember, Mabuso Simang was saying that the biggest problem in this organization is that when you raise issues, instead of them being addressed, you are insulted. You can expect your name to be scandalized. So the ANC is within its right. And the constitution of the ANC is very clear that if you're going to vote and support an opposition party that is not in alliance with the organization, you are guilty of misconduct. And when you put that in the constitution, misconduct means that you must subject a person to the process where you actually prove that this is misconduct. And the people must also be in the position to defend themselves. That is actually called fairness. But Mbalula has been very clear that there will be no such rule. The former president who knows the rules has already expelled himself. But in expelling himself, he does not address these other issues. He may go, but the issues that he has raised remain. And to think that just because you close your eyes and ears, they are going to disappear is to mislead yourself. Already you have members of the ANC, even MK, people who are called tried and tested, joining MK. We've seen, whether people like it or not, images that shows that there's a general support. And some people have tried to make it as if it wasn't matter. But you go to Northwest, you go to Mpumalanga, you've seen people saying, we're going to join this party. But what it does, it expresses people saying, we are not happy with this ANC of our country. And if you have to correct it, the answer is not to attack those who are raising concerns. Is to ask yourselves, are these concerns valid or not? And then you correct yourself. Then you can talk about you. But the ease with which you can shoot from the hip is not the way. It shows that you are emotionally unstable. You still have to become mature. And this is why, it is one thing you can say positively about the ANC president, although people consider that to be a man with no backbone. He is a process person who would rather subject people to a process within the ANC, inasmuch as he himself has managed to dodge some of the processes and has managed to encourage or agree to his own members, undermining the report by the panel in Parliament that found him to be wanting in terms of his constitutional duties and obligations. But nonetheless, the truth remains is that the former president is, if one looks at the constitution of the ANC, you can say this person has violated the constitution of the ANC. Okay. And the next position is subject him to the process and expel him.
Okay.
But pushing him out is an easy option because you're not answering the question.
All right, Prof, we could talk for a very long time, and I imagine that after the January 8th statement is delivered, there'll be more unpacking to be done. But we really do appreciate your time. Professor Prof Seepe is a political analyst and higher education and a strategy consultant.